our seats because our guest of honor is walking in any moment from now. May we all take our seats in readiness to welcome our guest of honor who's about to get into this room any moment from now.
Rwanda has registered economic and social gains over the past 2 decades with a 7.4% GDP increase from 2000 to 2023, an increase in electrification rate from 6% in 2003 to more than 80% in 2024, an increase in life expectancy from 47 years in 2000 to 69 years in 2022, and sharp improvements in access to healthcare and educational attainment. Despite impressive growth, Rwanda still has to do more to achieve its development ambitions. Rwanda's Pathways to Sustainable and Inclusive Growth report focuses on how public policy can encourage greater private sector participation in achieving Rwanda's vision of becoming an upper middle income economy by 2035 and a high income economy by 2050. The policy recommendations address 3 main growth challenges facing Rwanda, including boosting productivity and competitiveness, boosting inclusiveness of growth in Rwanda, and boosting sustainability and resilience. Let's take a closer look at pathways to sustainable and inclusive growth. boosting productivity and competitiveness through private sector development reforms. 2. Facilitate access to finance, develop skills that support private sector development, increase domestic savings, encourage healthy competition, promote innovation, facilitate ICT services. Growth and resilience through trade openness by increasing firm-level competitiveness to induce a shift from primary commodities to higher complexity products, leveraging services trade, especially digital trade, harnessing the benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Area, consolidating Rwanda's position as an infrastructure and regional logistics hub, boosting inclusiveness of growth in Rwanda through structural transformation, labor productivity, and inclusiveness by addressing barriers to rural-urban migration and promoting well-managed urbanization to accelerate structural transformation, promoting off-farm jobs creation and inclusiveness of foreign direct investment, FDI, sustaining improvements in adaptive social protection system to support vulnerable households, a prosperous agri-food sector to strengthen inclusiveness that can be boosted by helping farmers access markets, promoting climate-smart development opportunities for the private sector, laying the groundwork for an equitable agri-food sector, including women's participation, boosting sustainability and resilience through promotion of investments in green growth by promoting nature-based solutions such as tourism, leveraging the momentum of
decentralized... Ladies and gentlemen, let us be standing to receive our guest of honor, the Right Honorable Prime Minister of Rwanda. Let's give a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, as he joins us for this very, very significant event, the launch and closed-door workshops of the Country Economic Memorandum, Pathways to Sustainable and Inclusive Growth Report. Right Honorable Prime Minister, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us. We may be seated now. Nyakubahwa Minister w'Intebe, I wanted to start off kubabwira ko mfite ibishimo byinshi cyane. Ndanezerewe cyane 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 kandi ndanyuzwe, umutima wanjye wuzuye indirimbo nyinshi cyane biruta ibihumbi. Kuba ubu navuga igihugu cyanje u Rwanda. Mbachiri mugani? Oh yeah, undi munsi, next time. Let me do some subtitles. Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at the freshest Rwandan citizen. And I'm super proud to call this nation my home now. A country that has continued to register inclusive growth, growth that leaves nobody behind. 7.4% GDP increase. We've looked at the electricity increase, 80%. 47 to 69 years, that is actually the growth of life expectancy. At least now, I know I have chances of living up to 69 years. Thank you very much. It's a country with a strong leadership that does not just talk, but walks the talk. And so I want us to give a round of applause to the leadership and this great nation that is hosting us for this great event today. Let's give a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. If you're hearing this voice for the first time, if you're seeing me for the first time, as always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. I'm going to be your Masters of Ceremony today, and I want us now to be able to get conversational. If you have the social media networks and opportunity to tweet, please use the hashtag Rwanda Economic Drivers so that we can spread the gospel to as far as it can go. I want us now to get to the program of the day. And we'll be able to start off by hearing the opening remarks that are going to be delivered by the Minister of Finance and Economic of Rwanda. Let's put our hands together for Honorable Yusuf Murangwa.
Thank you very much. Right Honorable Prime Minister, World Bank Vice President for Eastern and Southern Africa, Honorable Ministers present here, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to welcome you to this event that marks an important milestone of the analytical work on the pathways for sustainable and inclusive growth. Thank you for having accepted our invitation. Allow me to thank you in particular, Right Honorable Prime Minister, not only for accepting to be the guest of honor today, to launch this analytical work, but also for the commitment you demonstrated to the earlier future drivers of growth, recommendations, and again in this analysis while it was still ongoing. Special thanks goes to you, Ms. Kwakwa, the World Bank Vice President for Eastern and Southern Africa, for your commitment and consistent leadership in supporting our development efforts and shaping our cooperation and collaboration with the World Bank Group. I also want to thank the entire expert team of the World Bank, that worked on this analysis, and the coordination team, including the country team led by the World Bank country manager, Mr. Sar. We cannot thank you enough for the effort over the last 2 years of this work. Dr. Zarabu Kibwe, the Executive Director for Rwanda at the World Bank, also I want to thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Right Honorable Prime Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, implementing the future drivers of growth reforms under the first national strategy for transformation was quite successful in spite of major shocks, including the COVID-19 shock. However, there's a lot of unfinished business that still needs to be addressed, that requires sustained effort, and hence the pathways for sustainable and inclusive growth analytical work that we are presenting today. The topics in this analysis were selected based on recent and emerging development challenges facing our economy. The analysis principally aims at high, inclusive, job-enhancing, and green-oriented growth. After the launch of this analytical work, workshops and sessions will be organized on various themes to further inform the implementation. Without preempting the presentation, the analysis has shown that the recent success of future drivers of growth reforms, despite shocks of the last years, was due to strong political will and broad consensus for important policy decisions. Our collective continued leadership based on lessons learned will be very essential in driving the needed reforms going forward. We look forward to continued collaboration with all our development partners as we embark on this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. Let's give it a round of applause, please. It is now time to hear from the country manager, World Bank Rwanda, Sahir Punde. Let's appreciate him as he comes to give us the opening remarks this morning.
Right Honorable Prime Minister, the World Bank Vice President for Africa East, the World Bank Country Director for Rwanda, Kenya, Somalia, and Uganda, Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Honorable Ministers present, members of the diplomatic corps, government officials present, fellow development partners, distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the launch of the Country Economic Memorandum Report, which focuses on pathways to sustainable and inclusive growth in Rwanda. The preparation of this report was a joint effort of the government of Rwanda and the World Bank team. For many years, the World Bank has accompanied the government of Rwanda on its development trajectory through a series of diagnostic studies and policy recommendations. And this edition of the Country Economic Memorandum updates the 2020 Future Drivers of Growth in Rwanda report by addressing recent development challenges with a specific focus on the private sector, inclusiveness, and building a green economy. We thank the government of Rwanda for the strong ownership demonstrated at every step of the way, from identifying key topics to analyzing and validating results with over 30 sectoral focal points designated by the government, as well as the technical leadership of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning. We are about to delve into the content of the report, and after today, we will be looking forward to continuing to build on this collaboration to implement the report's recommendations. The government of Rwanda has clear vision and a great track record when it comes to implementation. For example, over just 4 years, progress on the Future Drivers of Growth reform agenda has been impressive. Of the 82 policy recommendations analyzed, about 1/3 has achieved significant progress, and approximately half have made progress. We commend the government for the significant progress in advancing human capital, particularly in addressing stunting, improving basic education, and enhancing technical and vocational education and training, and higher education, among other achievements. Allow me to also commend the great partnership between the government and development partners, some of whom are in this room today. Our shared commitment to support the government's development trajectory is reflected in the portfolios of the development partners, including the World Bank, and the government's own budget. We look forward to achieving even greater progress moving forward as we continue blending our efforts to chart a green and inclusive future for the people of Rwanda. I invite you to participate in today's conversation, and I wish all of us fruitful deliberations. Murakoze.
Murakoze Chane, thank you very much. Thank you so much. Another round of applause for the country manager, World Bank Rwanda. It is now time to get the gist and delve into the content of this report. And who best to present this other than the senior country economist, World Bank, Peace Eme Niyibizi. Let's appreciate her as she comes to the set.
Right Honorable Prime Minister, Mrs. Victoria Adura, Vice President of the World Bank in Eastern and Southern Africa, Honorable Minister Present, all protocol observed, dear guests, good morning. I'm happy to stand here to present this pathway. It is a pleasure for me to present this report after 6 years of presenting the first report, The Future Driver of Growth. It was almost the same time. Today is 13. That time it was 18. It's just 6 years apart for 5 days. So before presenting, I would like to thank all the technical team. I know Minister did it and Sir did it, but we had the technical team led by 2 economists from the World Bank, myself and Calvin, and some experts from Ministry of Finance, Stella Nziryayo, who's the chief economist, Leonard Rugwabiza, who's the economic advisor, and Kabera Godfrey, who's the head of research and planning department. It was an effort of a big team, as they said. At World Bank, we had more than 60 persons. At the government, we have almost 40 persons, almost 100 team. And there have been consultation across, but that is the names we were able to get. So I wouldn't dare mention anyone, so not to forget most of the important of them. So the presentation will be around 3 topics. We are going to look at the recent patterns of the development in Rwanda. We look at the challenge and look at what could be done to achieve Rwanda's ambition. For the progress, as many have said, there have been impressive growth over the last 10 years. Despite COVID shock we had when we had the first recession for almost 20 years, the growth resumed. And I would say that in the last 3 years, we almost have an average of 10%. But overall, for the entire period of the last 15 years, it's 7%. Before COVID, the poverty reduction was impressive. We had a reduction of from 58 to 30, more than 20% of the poverty reduction over the period. That was also an impressive one. This was mostly facilitated by access to infrastructure and some development in social indicators. As they said, we have strong electrification, we had access to water, and we have also some social indicators such as maternity mortality rate and infant rate, which declined dramatically. And this time, Rwanda is above all the middle or low-income countries. Maybe we haven't added that, but Rwanda is almost to the same level as some of the upper middle-income countries. So with this development, Rwanda want to achieve more. They have ambition of becoming the upper middle income by 2035. This will require a significant growth of about 15% in the GDP growth, and the GDP per capita of about 12%. It has to be enormous to achieve that one. So, however, despite those improvements, despite this ambition, there are a lot of challenges that Rwanda needs to overcome before achieving that objective. Especially those challenges has been inherited while Rwanda was implementing the NST1. NST1 was inspired by the first report, the Future Drive of Growth. The first one is about the limited role of private sector, I would say. Of the recent years, we can see the public investment and the private investment both have been contributing to the growth. But there is a limit for more public investment as the debt is growing. So, but you have to make a disclaimer. Though the debt economy is increasing, it's still no moderate level. So, but there's no more rooms that government could still investing and in order to sustain the growth. So, as you can see in the graph, the private sector is taking off, but there is more room in order to achieve the upper middle income countries. So, our calculations demonstrate that we might need like 30% of GDP investment in order to achieve that ambition. The second challenge is the decline in how factors, growth factors are used, so-called total factor productivity. It was low, but over the last 10 years, it's also declining. This shows how the efficiency of using the growth factors is declining, which means there is need more to be done to increase the efficiency of use of factors. The third one is the human capital challenge. Rwanda has had education enrollment increasing, has had the stunting declining, but we're still having the problem of the capacity of a child born today to be productive at full capacity. Currently, a child born today can only produce at 38%, which means if we don't need to achieve that objective, we need to have a child born today to be able to produce at full capacity. Another one is the climate shock. So Rwanda is threatened by climate shocks. So because maybe of our slide, our country's called the country of 1,000 hills. That's another problem. So it's good for the tourism, but it's also a problem for the economy. So of recent, we have seen some climate changes affecting the economy. We can have drought, we can have floods, and the cost of reconstruction especially is high. If I'm not mistaken, the last flood, the estimated damage was around 3% of GDP, but the estimate cost was more than that. So the 3% was like, if we go back to the same level, but if we improve in order to have better infrastructure that cannot be destroyed, it's more than 3%. So also with the floods, for instance, the agriculture was destroyed, and there were problems with food prices. So inclusiveness is a problem. It's mostly linked to the previous factors we have seen in the first slides. For instance, when we had floods last year, the price hiked, and most of the affected districts, they are the ones with high poverty rates. We try to look at which districts are most affected, and most of them are the high poverty rate, which means the challenge we have in the country could also affect the inclusiveness of every Rwandan. So to achieve the ambition that we Rwanda have set, we have classified the policy option into 3 areas where we said we need to boost productivity, we need to create jobs and increase inclusiveness, and we need to be sustainable and be resilient to shocks. So boosting productivity will go through the private sector development. As I said, this is still a challenge, and we need to have a strong private sector in order to invest and to be able to sustain the growth. The challenge around the private sector development, I'll have to acknowledge that Rwanda has made a progress in laying the foundation of the private sector, but not still yet to the level that Rwanda would want to have it contributing. The option to look at the competitiveness, to look at the skill development that we have seen human capital problems, and we have also to look at how we can reap the benefit of ICT development and ICT infrastructure that Rwanda has laid down so that we can sustain the private sector development. The boosting productivity also can go through regional integration. Rwanda is a member for several regional blocs, especially the recent one on African continental free trade areas. Rwanda could also benefit and could also make itself a hub for benefiting most of the benefits there, especially we have infrastructure, we have the Bugesera airport coming up. Rwanda could make itself a hub for regional integration, for financial integration, so that we can reap the benefit of those regional integration and boost internal productivity. The second area is boosting job creation and inclusiveness. As I said, most of the challenge we have seen that affect mostly the inclusiveness of growth in Rwanda. So in order to do that, we have to look at how we could make stronger our structural transformation, which means moving population into agriculture to other service, or making agriculture more productive so that people involved in the agriculture could also gain more from their work rather than having agriculture for subsistence. We could also promote an adaptive social protection and sometimes protect the poor, vulnerable household in case of shock. So that's another area maybe to have inclusiveness. As I said, agriculture is key to the economy, and I think most of the gain that we have registered into poverty reduction was from agriculture. So that time, most of the reform was about the extension of land, but there's no room for extension of land. So we need like to review how we do business in agriculture. We need to have agriculture for business. We have to see how all input to agriculture could be rationalized so that agriculture could be more productive irrespective of the smaller space that we do have. We need also to boost sustainability and resilience. This is in face of climate shock and financial sector and fiscal space. So we know our nature-based solutions are there, and mostly we are vulnerable because our economy is mostly driven by agriculture, land-fed agriculture. We have tourism, and we have some extractive industry which are more vulnerable to climate shocks. So we need to look at on those sectors and adopt some nature-based solution in order to have those sectors linked first against climate change. The last one is about the fiscal sustainability. As I said, government has done a lot together with the government, with the private sector, but this time the private sector have to take the lead. If there are 50-50, private sector, you need to take 80% and leave 20% to the government so that government could focus on social sectors, which the private sector can't go to it. So we need, while being done, we need to have efficiency of expenditure in the social sectors. We have also to look at the efficiency of government investment, and also we need to have how we can make tax collection more efficient than it used to be, so that we can have more resources, even though government will do less in terms of economic growth, but have enough resource that we don't have, continue to have the debt rising. So I know Rwanda has a clear goals and strong leadership to implement this one, and the World Bank is confident that this work and the recommendation that we are done together will be implemented and help the country to achieve its ambition. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. It sets the stage for our next item on the agenda, a panel discussion that is going to make sense of some of the key pointers from this report. Allow me now to call on set, and I'd like to request that as I call you, use perspective from a development partner's perspective. Let's appreciate her as she joins us for this session. And I want to pass on the baton to the very able moderator for this session. She is the practice manager, World Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Abba Prasad.
Thank you so much, Eugene. And a very good morning to everyone here. Right Honorable Prime Minister, World Bank's Regional Vice President, Honorable Ministers of Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Honorable Ministers, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, colleagues, all protocols observed. I must say this is a great honor for me to be here to moderate this high-level panel, focusing on some of the key highlights of the just presented report on pathways to sustainable and inclusive growth. As we heard, let me start right away, in the interest of time, with Minister Sebahisi. Honorable Minister, we know that the National Bank of Rwanda has reported that Rwanda has seen a remarkable growth and increase in FDI flows in the first half of the year, almost 61%. It's really a strong recovery after some of the challenging years that were there. What do you see as the main drivers behind this increase, and how might Rwanda continue to strengthen its position as a top investment destination? Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, moderator. Let me acknowledge the presence of Right Honorable Prime Minister and the Vice President of World Bank, honorable ministers, and all protocols observed. Good morning. This gives me a great pleasure to have this conversation at a time when Rwanda has just adopted the National Strategy for Transformation 2, as well as the national industrial policy just 1 month ago. The question about the drivers of FDI, the way I reflect at it is there could be a number of drivers, but mainly I will focus on 4 of them. One, which I think everyone can agree with me, is the business environment. For any investor to make a decision to go to invest in a country, you have to look at the business environment of that country. And as you know, recently, World Bank has published a report where Rwanda ranked among the best countries where investors are well treated. We rank as number 38, if I'm not mistaken, which is a positive indicator overall. But there are also many things behind what we call a business environment. We are here talking about how investors are protected when they come to Rwanda. We are talking about the regulatory framework, what we have. We are talking about incentives. We are talking about facilities they have access to when they come to Rwanda. So business environment overall can be number 1. Number 2, I would say financial stability. As I look at the governor of Central Bank, I have to congratulate Rwanda that when you look at the stability of our currency, globally and within the region over the past recent years, Rwanda has been financially stable, which is also another factor that investors will look at. Thirdly, I will look at the opportunities that a country has, the geographical position of Rwanda being at the center of the continent, as well as market opportunity within the region and at continental level. When you come and establish in Rwanda, you are able to access natural resources, you are able to access raw materials, and at the same time, you are able to supply the regional and continental market because of the geographical position of our country. Last but not least, I would mention political and peace and stability. When you have political stability, when you have peace and security, then investor will be assured that their investment can be sustained throughout and for a longer period of time. So I will come back to answer to the second question because there's so many things that we can do to keep that momentum, but I would like to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, and for really outlining the 4 factors that you think have really helped a lot. So picking on a bit of what you said in terms of, the business environment and the geographical location, let me turn to Francois, who's from our private sector, to ask that how can the private sector play a larger role in strengthening Rwanda's supply chains, particularly in supporting small businesses and fostering resilience there?
Baba, imagine I'm a business owner of a tomato sauce factory in Rwanda. My main raw material are tomatoes. Allow me to concentrate on that line of supply chain. What do I need? I need a strong database of the businesses that are farming tomatoes. I need to know where they are located, who are they, their capacity. When we talk about capacity, let's talk about the size of their lands, the productivity of they have today. I need to know their financial capacity. I need to know their knowledge. And I need to know what type of products they have and the prices. But I also need to know, are they in an area where there is the ICT infrastructure that can allow me to get the data on time? Do they have appropriate logistic infrastructure to supply me logistically? I also need to know what is their experience in terms of dealing with the climate change. Are they highly affected by the climate disturbance? Is there a probability that my supply chain can be affected? So, how do I mitigate this? As a private sector owner, I really need a possibility to access data. I need to have appropriate infrastructure, but I also need access to the capital to be able to work in this environment. As the Private Sector Federation, we have been embarking in building a data bank that will allow us to provide our members with appropriate data. We are developing a business intelligence unit, which will be able to provide our members with business information. Today, we are launching this report. While reading this report, I noticed all the data are coming from government institutions. We need a business touch on those data. That business touch cannot come from others, but only from us, the private sector. So we need to understand the importance of providing those data, but also the importance of opening up and providing data that are not sensitive. Secondly, we also need reliable infrastructure, as I said, and for that, with the right data, we are able to link our members, to link them to invest collectively. If they need infrastructure to be able to collect the raw materials, if they need infrastructure to be able, as a logistic business person, to save on the costs of having appropriate infrastructure and being competitive. If we need infrastructure, for me as a business owner of a factory to be sure to have a supply chain which is reliable, why don't we invest together and make sure that infrastructure is in place? We also have a role as a private sector to help the business owners to collectively see the opportunity they can have in investing together, but also we have the role of linking them with the right long-term funding. And those funding, most of the time, they are requesting a quite good size of project. This is something that we are lacking today in Rwanda, good size of projects. This is only possible if we are able to put together our different expertise, our different needs, and our different needs in terms of capital. Last but not least, climate change is here. We have to deal with it. We need to have a strong access to other potential market to expand and being able to reach more regions. We need to know where we can source our materials in case we are affected. We need to know where we can connect with other private sector. We also need to know how we can collaborate rightly with our government, with key stakeholders in building those possibilities. The African Free Trade Area is one of the biggest solution we see as Rwandan business community. This one will allow to solve those problems. Now, business are doable, profitable. Let's talk another part of what we need as business owners. Through our institute, business institute we have in private sector, we provide
right trainings. We provide right capacity building program to build managerial skills, but also we provide linkages to the right strategic partners. So let me stop there for now.
Thank you so much, Francois, and especially for highlighting. Thank you for appreciating what she said. I think it was really important highlighting the role of data, the ability to have infrastructure, link collectivity, the issue of climate change, access to markets. So several points that you raised, including capacity and skills, which we'll come back to later. Let me turn to you, Chimiao, and given your experience working across several countries, what international examples could Rwanda draw from to promote inclusive growth, especially for programs that increase human capital access and jobs in underserved communities? Over to you, Chimiao.
Thank you very much, Abba. Before I address the question, let me make two general points. First, I think in many ways, as you've already heard, Rwanda itself, it's already a success story. Right? You've made tremendous progress in terms of your growth. You've made tremendous progress in terms of poverty reduction and the dramatic increase in life expectancy. It's something I think unheard of across the world. So I think there's some very impressive progress that already made. So the question is, if Rwanda wants to achieve its ambition of becoming a upper middle income country by 2035 or a high income country by 2050, you're actually going to need even higher growth and even more inclusive growth. So the question then is, what can be done to achieve that ambition? The second point I want to make is that I'm going to try to draw a few lessons from the countries I worked on. But I think it's also very important to note that each and every country is different. The initial conditions are different. Your natural, human capital, social endowments are different. Your size is different. And of course, your proximity to large markets and where you're located, it's also very different. So whatever lessons we can draw from other countries will really need to be tailored to the specific conditions in Rwanda. So let me perhaps just to take a few examples from the countries I've worked on. Three of them I've lived quite extensively in, China, Cambodia, and Bangladesh. But let me also try to bring some of the experience also from Vietnam. A common theme of all these four countries, it's actually that, like Rwanda, all of these four countries were economies at the beginning of their rapid development. They were all economies dominated by agriculture. Not only was agriculture contributing a significant part to their GDP, employment was where most of the people lived, in the rural area. So that's one very, very important factor to bear in mind, and that's why I'm also, in some ways, trying to look at the lessons from these countries. So what are some of these lessons? One, like Rwanda, each and every of these countries had a very clear vision for their country's development, and backed up that strong vision with a consistent and continuous commitment and investment to make that vision happen. I think that's probably one of the most important lessons we can draw from these countries, and I think you have that. And it's really important to stay that course. The second one is that in all these four countries, as I mentioned, that agriculture was the most important sector in their economies. So the government's efforts in developing the economy also started initially, and with a focus on agriculture. And this is very important for a number of reasons, right? And you've seen in the case of China and Vietnam, the very significant increase in productivity in the first few years. And these were not just a few percentage increases. The productivity in the agriculture sector in China and Vietnam in the first few years of their reforms were doubled or tripled or quadrupled their productivity, right? And this is important for a number of reasons. Not only were they able to solve the issue of food security, but they provided much higher income to the largest part of the population. With that increased income, the population was also able to save a lot more. Now that's important, I think, for domestic investment. Without the domestic savings, you're not going to get the kind of private investment that you will need for the private sector to grow. I think this is one of the challenges we face today in Rwanda. It's actually the generally very low savings rate in the economy. You're not going to have a high savings rate when the majority of the population are still just earning a subsistence in agriculture. So significant improvement in labor productivity comes initially from the agriculture sector that not only provided better food security, living standards, but also significant savings to the economy. So that's one. And in the case of Cambodia and Bangladesh, that growth in agriculture productivity comes from obviously, all of 4 countries come from intensification of agriculture, not through expansion. Better fertilizers, irrigation systems, and climate-resilient seeds and high-yield seeds, for example. These are some of the key ingredients to the increase in productivity in all these 4 countries. So that's number one, in terms of the sort of initial growth. And number 2, it's really this, in my view, that, and here it may or may not be relevant anymore for Rwanda, although I believe that there's still an opportunity for Rwanda to leverage that. And that is that all of these countries went into labor-intensive manufacturing sector. The reason they're able to do that, it's actually relatively simple, right? When you had a huge increase in your labor productivity in agriculture, you used to employ 70% of these people, now you only needed 20, 30% of them. So there's a release of a huge amount of cheap labor from the agriculture sector that can be used in services and in labor-intensive manufacturing. So what happened in China, in Vietnam, I think in manufacturing sector, you know them quite well. In the case of Bangladesh, they focused initially on garment sector. So today, Bangladesh is actually the 2nd largest garment manufacturer in the world and 2nd largest exporter of garment after China. And similarly in Cambodia, they're in garment, but they're also in a lot of the light manufacturing sectors, including in electronics. So that's also important. And similar to the very significant improvement in labor productivity in agriculture, with this labor-intensive manufacturing, the earnings of a large part of the population also increased, right? Again, providing the space for increase in savings. I wanted to emphasize that in both agriculture sector and in labor-intensive manufacturing, these happen to be 2 sectors where the growth is extremely inclusive, in the sense that you are actually employing some of the poorest people, not just in agriculture, now in labor-intensive manufacturing. In the case of Bangladesh, the vast majority of those reasonably well-paid jobs in garment manufacturing went to women in the rural areas. So all of a sudden, you had a huge increase in their earnings, and that clearly not only improved their living standards, allowing them to invest more themselves in education, in health, but also for the economy as a whole, providing more savings. So I think these are the sort of sectors where inclusive growth really benefits everyone. So the last point I want to make is then really the important role that the private sector played in all these 4 countries. If you look back at China and Vietnam at the beginning of their rapid development a few decades ago, both of these countries were almost 100% state-owned. The private sector was non-existent. In that sense, they were in a much worse situation than you are today from the point of view of you actually already have a private sector. They had none of it. But after a few years, particularly after the reforms in the agriculture sector, you had seen a boom of initially mostly individual enterprises, right? And what the government did is that the government used its very limited public resources to invest first and foremost in education, second in infrastructure, in particularly in transport and energy. These are the sort of things that require public investment. But they let the private sector to grow. If you look at some of the numbers, it's just amazing how much today the private sector accounts for GDP in both China and Vietnam when they started from a 0 base, right? So if you think about it, if countries that were completely state-owned can actually develop a thriving private sector, there's no reason why countries that already have a maybe small, but you already have a private sector, why they cannot develop. The key, of course, it's really in some of the policy areas where the public sector is providing those public goods, energy, infrastructure, and other things, and more importantly, the policies. I spent a few years in the private sector managing a few private enterprises. I have seen that the capacity of the private sector, the kind of entrepreneurialism, the innovations in the private sector, it's actually unbelievable. So as long as you have a conducive environment, the private sector will not only grow, they will thrive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim Yao. Thank you all. And especially for highlighting the vision, the commitment of the government, the issue on the 2 sectors that you raised, agriculture, manufacturing, and the role of the private sector. So just wanted to highlight that we will have a workshop on agriculture, but in the interim, let me turn to Honorable Minister back on the issue of manufacturing, Rwanda's ambitious industrial goals. And what role do you see for the private sector partnerships, particularly in increasing Rwanda's manufacturing capabilities and fostering local innovation? Over to you, Minister.
Yeah, let me first congratulate my predecessor for having described extensively what can be done in agriculture and manufacturing sector to increase productivity. We have 2 key indicators that we are looking for to achieve over the next 5 years. One is doubling our export revenues from the current $2.5 billion to about $7.3 billion. The second one, we are looking at doubling the private sector investment from the current $2.2 billion to about $4.6 billion. How do we achieve those 2 indicators? And how do we address the challenge of productivity that everyone has been alluding to? There are 2 major ways of doing that. Let me start with value addition in agricultural sector, which is very important because recently I learned a story where Rwanda has been offered markets for agricultural products, let's say avocado. You get a big market in Europe, and you have to supply containers of avocados. How sustainable that can be. A container of avocados, when they get there and they are tested, and for some reason they are rejected, what do you do with raw avocados? When you can process them here, you export oil, or you export soap, or any other cosmetic that can be produced out of avocados. We have another story of chili. We have a big market of chili in China. But last week when I was there, I was discouraging our exporters. Please do not export raw chili. Our land is limited. So how much can you produce of raw chili and export it to China in bulk? Why don't you process chili if you're able to produce chili here and export chili sauce or chili paste or any other product that you can get out of chili? That's about value addition.
Absolutely.
So any agricultural commodity that we are exporting, can we strive to add value to that before we export? And that's the role of private sector to do that. Then the second way is through manufacturing. My colleague has spoken about labor-intensive manufacturing, but we also know that there are limited factors of production that we have to talk about in Africa. Our financial sector need to improve. The capital is very expensive. Even with the availability of labor,
Sure.
still you have to bear in mind that you will have to pay for capital. That's why we also have to leverage on technology. So if you just look at labor intensive alone, and you don't take advantage of current technology, then you will be excluded from the global market. So for us to be competitive, we have to get into manufacturing, looking at the productivity of labor, looking at the cost of capital, but also leveraging on the most recent technology, if we have to be competitive. As government, we are creating enabling environment for private sector to do that. We have identified special economic zones and industrial parks where we strive to put in place adequate infrastructure as the basis for private sector investment to come and enter manufacturing sector. Secondly, in the same manufacturing sector, we have worked with researchers and experts to identify sectors where Rwanda has potential. We have a list of them. Mm-hmm. We are currently developing sector-specific strategies where you come and we present with you a feasibility study in that sector. So you invest, you get into it knowing what you are getting out of it, knowing what it will require you to produce in that sector, knowing the availability of raw materials, knowing the technology you can use. We have institutions like NILDA that work on a daily basis on technology development. We're investing in research. So we want to bring everyone together to make sure that we can develop the manufacturing sector. And last but not least, I want to talk about skills development. Currently, we have a skills mismatch. That's why some of the sectors have not been able to develop. So by focusing on developing manufacturing sector, we also want to see how can we link the TVET, the technical and vocational training education, with industries, with the sectors. And the TVET will be running programs that are targeted to industries that we want to develop in the country. So those are just a few policy orientation that I can mention that will make manufacturing prosper, will make value addition in agricultural sector, that will contribute to doubling our exports, that will contribute to doubling our private sector investment, and that will also make our economy stable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I think it really shows the commitment when the government has two goals to fulfill in terms of doubling export revenue, doubling public investment, private sector investment, sorry. And to pick on your last point, and then I segue into the issue of skills that you spoke through, the TVET, etc. So I will ask Francois that what skills are most in demand from private companies, and how can private sector support educational programs to better align with these needs to prepare young Rwandans, the youth, for high quality jobs? And I must confess that we are running out of time, so I probably give you around 2 minutes for that answer. Thank you.
Hands-on technical skills are one of the biggest priorities right now to allow the growth of our industrial sector. In my view, partnerships between the private sector, Ministry of Education, and higher learning institutions must be put in place, and we need to design and adopt the domestic dual learning and education. This model is the one that we see as private sector as a solution to the skill gap that is existing today. Allow me to bring you back to the tomato sauce factory. If a young agro-processing engineer is coming to me without no field experience, and another one is coming with a dual training education, I will probably invest in the second one. The second one will cost me less, but mostly he will allow me to better manage my business in terms of knowing already what we are talking about and having the chance to have been able to learn what we are doing and going back to the theory and maybe come back with an innovation. I will gain double. So dual trainings exist in other countries. I do believe we can adapt it in Rwanda. We have been talking about it for a long time. Let's maybe start. Challenges will remain. We will manage them as they come, but we need to start. That's my take for this.
Thank you so much. I think you laid it out very well, the issue of dual training and how that can go through. So I would not try to summarize this very rich and high-level panel discussion that we've had, where we've gone from high-level strategic policy issues to even very granular examples, going from cross-country down to what you said on the tomato sauce, down to what Minister mentioned in terms of manufacturing and industry. So I would just like to thank the panel for this extremely high-level discussion that we've had. I know we've not had time for questions from the audience, but just want to let you know that the panelists will grace us in the breaks outside, both for lunch as well as for the breakout sessions that we have in the afternoon. So I do hope you'll be able to interact with them for your bilateral questions. So. Okay. I must thank the Right Honorable Prime Minister for allowing us extra 10 minutes for audience questions. So please, it's open to the audience. As far as I think, there are microphones, and please, could you keep your questions very concise and precise? Please introduce yourself, the institution that you represent. I must say I'm blinded by the light, so I don't see the hands.
There's a hand at the far side.
Please, please.
Hello there. Thank you very much for the... Hi there. Thank you very much for the panel. I thought it was really interesting. I'm Ronan Mulligan. I work for the British High Commission here in Kigali as an economist. I wanted to pick up on the point on agriculture productivity. I thought that was a an amazing point, really well made, in translating the lessons from Southeast Asia to here and tailoring them to this context. And we've done a bit of work in the agriculture sector, but it's been more, individual program and training focused, and delivered some really great results. But I wanted to ask what you think the big system level reforms are to get the increases in agricultural productivity that will lead to the development process that you're describing at government level, and how we can regulate and get the policies right to induce that change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe we take another quick question, maybe two more if possible. Please introduce yourself, and if you stand, we can see you. So maybe while they think of the question, Jimmy, I'll probably turn to you on this question on productivity, and also to reiterate that there is a breakout session in the post-lunch, and we'll be really grateful if you attend that.
Sure, thank you. As I said, obviously every country is different, right? And that's also true in agriculture. One thing I do see where that things that really help to improve agriculture in Asia, both South and East Asia, and not happening as much in the African continent, is the issue of irrigation. If you look at it, across the African continent, up to this point, most of the growth, output growth in the sector in agriculture, come from expansion of land, not through intensification of the use of land. A major reason is irrigation. The Asia region has, if I remember correctly, has over 50% of its arable land is irrigated. In this region, it's between 5 and 6%. 5 and 6%. In Rwanda, you actually have an abundant supply of fresh water resources. But do you know how much fresh water you actually use in this country at this moment? 5%. 5% of your fresh water. Now, in the past, we've had issues. Particularly in Southeast Asia, most of the irrigation systems are collectively or publicly owned and operated. And there are issues with that in terms of maintenance we've had in this region. But the technology has also developed so quickly in the last many years, particularly with solar power and the cost of solar power. And I actually think that the potential is in farmer-led irrigation systems, not in those huge public-funded irrigation systems which require initial large investment, but also constant maintenance, right? And there are incentives issues there too. How do you actually allocate water? But we have seen in Southeast Asia and other regions that you've seen a huge increase in farmer-led irrigation systems, or what you call here small technology irrigation systems or technologies. And that can actually be quite effective. If you just think about it, you don't need to do a lot of analysis, right? If you can, because of the irrigation you have, you're able to do 2 crops, including instead of 1 at this moment. You're doubling your output and your productivity. And in fact, the lock-on effects of having higher productivity of output, it's even bigger. The multiplier is actually not just double, but a lot more than that, particularly if you then can invest in supply chain issues in terms of access issues, for example, rural access roads, so that products can be taken out of the rural area. That's going to be very, very important. So I'm just giving you one example in terms of irrigation, because I see that's the one that has the most potential in this region, and I think in Rwanda.
Thank you, Chimio. So while we look for other questions, I would turn to Honorable Minister and picking up on the point which Chimiao made on the multiplier effect and how this impacts with industry. So perhaps you would like to add something.
I would like to add a second layer of intervention that can be made in agriculture to make it more productive, in addition to irrigation and other technologies that can be applied. Of course, you will talk about fertilizers and quality seed. But what I see is more important for that industry is the supply chain management and infrastructure that you put in place to deal with post-harvest losses. In many African countries, you have the rate of post-harvest losses that is above 60% because you have not put in place adequate infrastructure or adequate technology to assist farmers to take their produce to the market. And also, you have to look at the forward and backward linkages. If you invest heavily in agriculture, you have to make sure there is a processing plant that will absorb the produce of that specific crop. If there is a missing link, that's where the post-harvest losses will increase. That's where the farmers will not be able to access the market. I think managing the entire supply chain is very important. If I give you one example, in Rwanda, we produce a lot of milk across the country, and we also have milk processing plants, but our milk processing plants are still operating at a low capacity because that supply chain is not well managed. Farmers will end up not having a market for their milk, but the plants will also end up not having enough milk to process. So that missing link, once it is addressed, you can also contribute to agriculture productivity.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. So we have like a 2-minute in the grace period that we've allowed. Madam, please. Right in front, please, the mic.
Thank you so much. This is Dania Katan from UNHCR. My question is for the Honorable Minister. You have mentioned something very important about the mismatching and the skills development. As UNHCR, we are always keen on designing market-driven training, not only for the refugees, but also for the members of the host community where they are working together. So my question is it possible to have access to this information, or there are any study or research about the market needs, the labor market, not only for jobs and wage employment, but also for the support of small entrepreneurs, the MSMEs, to be part of different value chain, especially in manufacturing and in agribusiness. Because this data and information about the market needs will really help us in designing this training, and also to make sure that we are equipping the refugees and the host community and training that can help them to access to the labor market. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister, I would turn directly to you.
She asked a very difficult question. So do you want to have the numbers or sectors where we have skills gap?
Exactly. If we have these studies or research, because also on our level we are trying to do something, especially with the expert like ILO, for example, but if these studies and research exist already in the ministry or at the national level, it would be much better. Because as us, as UNHCR, we are also working together with the government, with MINEMA, our counterpart, and this is the whole idea of inclusion. So we prefer not to create parallel system, but if this research and study already exists, we are more than happy to access this information so we can plan accordingly.
Okay. Before I answer to your question, I will have to consult if we have done any skills assessment recently. I mean skills gap assessment recently through the Ministry of Labor. But I also like to mention, as Ministry of Trade and Industry, we can tell you sectors, untapped sectors where we think in the future we should be developing skills. if we have to develop those sectors, especially sectors that have not been tapped into in the past. But for the skills gap, as we stand today, I will rely on a study that could have been done by Ministry of Labor. Thank you.
Thank you again, Minister. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, audience. Thank you, Prime Minister, for giving us the extra time. This has been a really rich discussion, so I just thank and hand over to Eugene.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Well done. Let's appreciate them out of here. This is when I wish I was seated next to the Prime Minister. Please go ahead. Just catch up a little bit. Exchange contacts, because these forums are also supposed to end up being networking sessions where we are able to build meaningful partnerships. All right? Yeah? You have half a minute to do that. Sadly, there are those who are just not even talking to each other. They're just looking straight ahead. Hawaiichi, what happened? All right. So I think we've always said that failing to plan is planning to fail. And I think the person who said that must have been from Rwanda. Because Rwanda understands the assignment. We plan. I like the fact that I'm saying we plan. We do. All right? And I'm sure that what we are doing right now is going to be impacting so many generations to come. And for that reason, all of you in this room has a place in heaven, for those who believe in heaven. If Angel Gabriel asks you where your name is not on the book of life, say, Anangwe said so. I have my place here. All right? So thank you very much for your patience. Thank you so much for being here. We are now going to move to the next item on our agenda for today. And we'll be hearing some incredible remarks from high-profile officials who are joining us right here today. And I want us to start off with the Executive Director of the World Bank Group, Dr. Zarao Kibwe. Let's appreciate him as he comes to give us his remarks. Energy for him, please, until he gets on stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, MC. The Right Honorable Prime Minister of the Republic of Rwanda, the Minister of Finance and Economic Planning and Governor of the World Bank for the Republic of Rwanda, Honorable Yusuf Murangwa, Minister of State of Public Investments and Resource Mobilization and Alternate Governor of the World Bank, Honorable Mutesi Rusagara, the World Bank Vice President for Eastern and Southern Africa, Ms. Victoria Kwakwa, Honorable members of the Cabinet and Governor of the Central Bank of Rwanda, development partners, World Bank staff led by the country manager, Mr. Sarr, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm deeply honored to be here today, and I wish to extend my sincere gratitude to the government of Rwanda for inviting me to be part of the launch of the Pathway to Sustainable and Inclusive report, which holds so much potential for shaping the future of this country. This report comes at a time when many countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, are exploring innovative ways to upgrade their growth models to generate more and better jobs, enhance domestic resource mobilization, and accelerate poverty reduction. Interestingly, the report we are launching today builds upon the groundwork established by the very famous report called Future Drivers of Growth Report. It delivers new insights as Rwanda embarks on its second national strategy for transformation. This event today exemplifies the very essence of partnership. It serves as a powerful reminder of what can be achieved when governments, development partners, and other stakeholders come together with a shared vision. It is this partnership that empowers Rwanda to navigate the current complexity of global economic landscape with greater efficiency, blended local insights with global expertise to craft tailored and impactful strategies for development. Rwanda's remarkable success in leveraging such partnership has been a cornerstone of its impressive socio-economic progress. This report stands as a testimony to how a collaborative approach can yield actionable insights that inform policy and accelerate development outcomes. Encouragingly, this report demonstrates once again that the World Bank is not only a financing bank, but also it's a knowledge bank. It is part of what we call the World Bank's Knowledge Compact for Action that represents a shift towards integrating knowledge into every process of the development process, ensuring that decisions are informed by evidence and best practice tailored to local context, such as the one here in Rwanda. As the report rightly emphasizes, job creation is fundamental to economic growth and social mobility. In the African context, where youth make up a significant portion of the population, creating meaningful employment is essential to harnessing the demographic dividends and drive inclusive growth. Rwanda's commitment to this agenda is timely and critical for ensuring that its economic progress uplifts all segments of the society. I also commend the emphasis placed by the report on climate change adaptation. By prioritizing resilience and sustainability, Rwanda is setting an example of how nations can grow their economies while safeguarding their natural resources for future generations. In closing, I believe that the insights from this report, coupled by the able leadership of these countries and tailored support of the trusted partners like the World Bank, will contribute to the successful implementation of the second national strategy for transformation, therefore positioning Rwanda on the sustainable path to become an upper middle income by 2035 and a higher income by 2050. Murakoze.
Thank you. Murakoze Chane. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is a great friend of Rwanda. Not to say that you are not. We've seen her, we've heard her remarks, and of course it is time for us to hear from the Regional Vice President of the World Bank, Victoria Kwakwa. Let's appreciate her as she comes to deliver her remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Eugene. Now, I don't think I can match Eugene's skills in speaking Kinyarwanda, but I'm going to say Muramutse Neza. The Right Honourable Prime Minister, the Honourable Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Honourable Ministers, the Honourable Governor of the National Bank of Rwanda, development partners, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I guess I said that already. Anyway, it's a pleasure to come back to Rwanda, and particularly to join the launch and dissemination of this country economic memorandum focusing on pathways to sustainable and inclusive growth in Rwanda. And I'd really like to thank you, Prime Minister, for making time to be here and gracing this occasion with your presence. I want to thank you for the trust that you've bestowed in this partnership with the World Bank, and just assure you that we don't take it for granted. It's a partnership that's very important for us. We learn a lot from Rwanda, and hopefully you also take something from this partnership. I really appreciate that this work has been done by a joint team. This is not a group of World Bank experts doing this, but government has been part of it. You've challenged our experts on certain elements of it, and we've worked together and come to this report, which we're launching today. And we hope that this report is impactful. It's an update of the pivotal Future Drivers of Growth report of 2020 and expands the original analysis by exploring emerging challenges and opportunities across key policy areas with a forward-looking perspective to support Rwanda's long-term development. Today, our goal is not only to present the findings but also to foster a meaningful dialogue among stakeholders, paving the way for actionable strategies that align with Rwanda's vision for sustainable growth, job creation, and inclusivity. And I must say, this panel that we've just had was just amazing, very substantive, hearing perspectives from the government, the minister, thank you so much, from the private sector, and from our own Chimiel, our country director, who's also brought global experiences to the table. And also let me thank the panelists. Now, before I go to very brief written remarks, I want to say again, as Chimiel said in his comment, that this launch event and this report is first and foremost about celebrating Rwanda's success. Rwanda is a success story already, has achieved a lot, as the report has highlighted, and achieved very rapid growth of rate. You know, all of that was in there. I'll say a little bit more. So Rwanda has achieved success. But we also celebrate the fact that Rwanda does not want to rest on its oars. For Rwanda, this is not the end. This is going into the next phase in a higher gear with the objective of achieving high income status by 2050. That's the bold ambition, that's the dream that Rwanda wants to achieve, and that needs to be celebrated. And there are challenges. Yes, there's still gaps, but there's a lot that Rwanda has to work on. Build on the successes and learn lessons and go to a higher level. And this is what we're here to discuss, and this is what this report is about. If Rwanda is going to make high income status by 2050, very quick back of the envelope calculation, which my colleague just did a few minutes back, suggests that the economy has to grow annually at an average rate of about 12.2%. Now, 7.7% that you've been growing to date, 12.2%. You still have a lot to do. So that's where the ambition lies, and that's what says more needs to be done. And there's a longer road to be traveled. And how can that be achieved? How can the opportunities be seized? How can be tapped? How can the challenges be addressed? We hope that this report contributes to that. And our partnership is really about that. It's really helping Rwanda to go even higher and to be the Rwanda that the leadership of this country, that all Rwandans want to see by 2050. So as we celebrate Rwanda's journey, the main findings of this report offer valuable insights into the nation's accomplishments and the strategic actions needed to build on them. My colleagues have delved deeper into the report, but allow me to highlight some of the key conclusions and policy recommendations. First, Rwanda's economic and social achievements have been remarkable. The country has demonstrated resilience and progress that set a benchmark for many of its African peers. From 2006 to 2022, Rwanda's GDP grew by an average of nearly 7% annually, outperforming most other African nations, and indeed most nations globally. Life expectancy, as you heard, reached nearly 70% in 2022, reflecting significant strides in healthcare access. Infrastructure development has achieved transformative results. For example, the share of the population with access to electricity surged from 6% in 2000 to more than 80% in 2024. Rwanda has been a leader in policy reforms, enabling the modernization of institutions, enhanced participation in international trade, and successfully attracting foreign direct investment. The rate of foreign direct investment as a share of GDP is higher in Rwanda than in most other countries in Africa. This is all good. Rwanda's remarkable achievements have fueled even greater aspirations, as I mentioned, and the government has set the ambitious target for long-term growth, with Vision 2050 aiming for a GDP per capita rate of over 10% to reach upper middle income status by 2035 and high income status by 2050. To meet these aspirations, the report highlights areas where accelerated efforts are needed to promote higher, more inclusive, and sustainable growth. First, enhancing productivity, as we heard, and job creation. While economic growth has been strong, job creation has not kept pace. Addressing this requires tackling a few challenges. I'll mention some of the main ones. First, as was said, strengthening human capital, enhancing skills and education, which will really contribute to greater productivity. Second, optimizing resource allocation, improving the efficiency of resource allocation, ensuring that the resources that Rwanda has go to the sectors and the areas, the enterprises that use them the most effectively and efficiently to deliver on growth and jobs. And third, promoting urbanization, with most of the population still residing in rural areas, encouraging urban development, which has the potential through agglomeration and innovation and economic opportunities to also fuel growth, and growth that is shared. Second, empowering the private sector. The private sector holds the key to driving growth, fostering competition, and creating quality employment. Accelerated progress is essential in areas such as competition, business capabilities, mobilization of domestic savings, access to finance, ICT services, innovation, trade, alongside regional integration. Expanding private sector investments is vital for Rwanda to achieve its upper middle income status. And then continuing to foster inclusiveness. Rwanda's growth has been good for poverty reduction. Poverty has fallen significantly, as you heard, through the growth that has been achieved. There's more to be done, and more people need to be pulled out of poverty. And so going forward, we have to ensure that growth continues to benefit Rwandans, all Rwandans, and particularly benefit those who are at lower income levels. So sustaining and enhancing social protection systems to support some of the most vulnerable households is going to be essential. Fourth, modernizing agriculture, and we've all heard about that. With 72% of the population, 92% of the poor residing in rural areas, improving the productivity and resilience of the agriculture sector is crucial for driving structural transformation and inclusive growth. Transforming agriculture into a business-oriented sector, strengthening market linkages, adopting climate-resilient practices, and developing local food systems has the potential to open new market opportunities for sustainable growth. And fifth, building resilience to polyshocks. Strengthening Rwanda's resilience is essential, given its exposure to chronic and extreme events, natural disasters, pandemics, and external economic fluctuations. Sectors that are reliant on natural assets such as water and land, and vulnerable to climate events, make up a notable share of GDP, of exports, and employment. So investing in cost-effective nature-based solutions by diversifying use and modernizing management of natural assets and monetizing ecosystem services will help support climate resilience while creating jobs. And adopting a programmatic approach to sustainable land management will be key to lowering climate risks across the hilly landscapes of Rwanda. So the World Bank remains strongly committed to promoting and supporting this government to move forward on this agenda. Supporting the private sector, we have historically prioritized long-term financing to addressing key binding constraints to the private sector in Rwanda. And as you heard in the earlier introduction and the panel, a lot has been done on the private sector enabling environment. Our portfolio has expanded in recent years, including a private sector development policy financing series of about $300 million, which will support the government to continue to implement critical reforms, enhance competition, attract FDI, and stimulate trade in services. Climate actions and resilience. Our support for climate actions and resilience has expanded significantly. In Rwanda, we're excited to continue collaborating with the government on innovative instruments to scale up climate action and bolster economic resilience. Just let me conclude, Right Honorable Prime Minister, by saying we remain committed to support Rwanda on this exciting journey towards sustainable, inclusive, and a resilient economy. Today's events mark an important milestone in our partnership, reinforcing our shared commitment to shaping Rwanda's pathway to long-term prosperity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Regional Vice President, World Bank. And now, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to invite our guest of honor, the Right Honorable Prime Minister of Rwanda, Edouard Ngirente. Let's appreciate him as he comes to address us.
Senior government officials here present, development partners, representatives of the private sector, our distinguished guests, a very good afternoon. Six years ago, exactly in November 2018, the government of Rwanda, in partnership with the World Bank Group, we launched the Future Drivers of Growth study. This report has been key in collectively identifying and finding solutions to Rwanda's development challenges and informing our long-term vision 2050. Today, I'm pleased to join you as we launch the second edition or the updated version of the Future Drivers of Growth report, with the title, Pathways to Sustainable and Inclusive Growth. Allow me to begin by thanking the panelists first and the presentation made on this important analytical work on the pathways to sustainable and inclusive growth in Rwanda. I would like to thank the World Bank Group, both the board and the management, respectively represented by Dr. Zarau, the executive director, and Dr. Victoria Kwakwa, for a stronger collaboration and long-standing cooperation with the government of Rwanda. Particularly, I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Victoria Kwakwa, the Vice President, and reiterate our appreciation for her leadership, especially in monitoring the progress of the report development. Your collaboration, along with that of your team, both locally and at headquarters, has always been very important for us. We very much appreciate your frank feedback and the constructive discussions. Our distinguished guests, the publication of this report is particularly timely for the government of Rwanda. After 6 years, and with numerous challenges, including shifts in the global, regional, and the domestic landscapes, this analysis is both needed and welcomed. The report will play an important role in guiding the implementation of our future strategies. In fact, as it was developed concurrently with the National Strategy for Transformation 2, the report's primary findings have already informed it. Distinguished guests, Rwandans are eager for development and our government is committed to pushing forward toward the aspirations of Vision 2050. Despite facing external shocks and challenges, even in times of difficulties, we are determined to keep moving forward. And I must mention that very often our partners, including the World Bank Group, have shown as much commitment as we have. Based on stronger collaboration with the World Bank Group and other development partners, as a government, we always work toward achieving our commitment. We are committed to remaining an accountable, responsible, and result-oriented government. Our achievements over the years stand as a testament to the success of our development partnership. I will not go into details with numbers and figures on these achievements. Some of them were highlighted by my sister Victoria Kwakwa and our panelists. But what is obvious is that in addition to our sustained economic growth, we have achieved a lot in addressing critical development challenges, be it in education, health, agriculture, and infrastructure, and other sectors. As I mentioned earlier, this joint analysis has informed and will continue to shape our strategies for the next 5 years. It highlights gaps and policy actions, several of which have been already included in our National Strategy for Transformation 2, launched a few weeks ago. I have noticed that the report recommended developing a climate finance strategy. While the report was still being finalized, our government had already begun implementing this recommendation. This demonstrates our commitment to follow through once we make a decision. As I conclude, I would like to express my appreciation to the dedicated team of experts from both the World Bank Group and the Rwandan government for their joint efforts in producing this flagship report. I commend the actionable policy recommendations proposed in this study, which will serve as a guide in implementing the necessary reforms toward realizing our national transformation agenda. Furthermore, I want to emphasize our government commitment to continue addressing the identified and emerging challenges, leveraging the lesson learned from this study in a close collaboration with our all partners. On this note, I am pleased to declare the Pathways to Sustainable and Inclusive Growth report is officially launched. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Right Honorable Prime Minister, I would like to request you stay with us on the stage as I request the World Bank Regional Vice President to join the Right Honorable Prime Minister on stage. I would like also to request the Honorable Yusuf Murangwa, the Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, to join, and also the Executive Director of the World Bank. Please join. We will do a symbolic launch of the Country Economic Memorandum Pathways to Sustainable and Inclusive Growth report through a beautiful, memorable photo session. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. It is official. It's out. There you go. May I now request that all cabinet members, including Professor Nshuti Manasseh in the room, to join this photo. I'll also want to request the country director of the World Bank, country manager, World Bank, practice manager, World Bank, program leader, World Bank, and the chairperson of Private Sector Federation to join this amazing group photo, ifoto y'urwibutso. Wonderful. Thank you very much. A round of applause one more time. I would like to request in a moment from now, we'll be breaking for lunch. And I want to request that we will allow our guest of honor and his delegation to exit the room first, and then we'll follow later. We have farmers in the room. Let's appreciate them by eating everything that will be on the buffet. Right, Honorable Prime Minister, thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much for gracing this.